Hangman Page, Lance Archer, Texas death match for the AEW Championship. It starts in the back, and they make their way onto the stage where Archer gets thrown through a gimmick pane of glass on the stage and is busted from the forehead and gets brought to the ring. And Page hits the buckshot lariat almost immediately, and Archer rolls to the floor, and the count to 10 begins. And then Dan Lambert appears as Archer.
So it's last man standing rules.
Yes. So you've got to be down for the count of 10. So Dan Lambert appears. Archer is destroying Page with a trash can lid, and Lambert unscrews the turnbuckle and takes the top rope off as they explain this eliminates the buckshot lariat.
Boy, was this brilliant.
I
love it.
This was very smart. It was even better with the finish.
Completely. I mean, I imagine like some promotion out there throughout wrestling history has done this in the past for any sort of like match against a babyface high flyer who relies on the ropes. Take the rope away and they can't do their moves. I think that's brilliant. And I absolutely loved it. And like you said, when we get to the finish, oh boy.
So they brawl into the crowd. Page hits a moonsault. They go through the break. Archer is setting up 2 tables on the floor, which would be the big part of the finish. And he teases a blackout off the apron. That gets stopped. And at this point, like, Archer is bleeding a significant amount. Hangman was that much more. He was completely covered in blood. I mean, the Toronto Star is getting a quote ASAP.
I mean, this was, I think, the definition of blood and guts and gory self-mutilation all in one here. You know, every WWE buzz.
They should have done this before the earnings call last week. They missed their timing.
Yeah, this was a lot of blood.
It was a lot of blood. There's a dead eye and choke slam that are blocked. And then Jake, who is also ringside, ends up hitting a short arm clothesline on Hangman, and this place goes nuts. Which, again, another tie-in to this venue with WrestleMania 4 and 5. You know, Jake was very prominent at that both of those shows. And then he goes for the DDT, and Archer stops Jake, and the crowd is so upset. And this was like our first tease of tension here between Jake and Archer, as this crowd really wanted to see this DDT, and then Page ended up hitting his own DDT onto Archer.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, you know, you've heard our complaints about Jake Roberts being a part of this, especially with Dan Lambert attached to Lance Archer. I mean, Jake's role kind of seems unnecessary. So I am curious to know if they're actually teasing a breakup and if Jake's going to go babyface. And is Jake actually a more interesting and a more suitable babyface? Because this crowd certainly felt that way. You know, that short arm clothesline looked pretty damn good, and I'm sure DDT would that. I don't know. Have we seen him do a DDT yet so far?
We've seen him do the short arm clothesline. I don't think
might be a bit more physical than they're allowing him, but still, like, I wonder how Jake would be as a babyface. I don't know. I wonder as a mouthpiece. I mean.
The crowd starts chanting that they want fire, and that's kind of where you raise the expectation level, I think, for this fan base when it comes to a violent match. But there's kendo stick shots until Archer breaks it over his knee and chokeslams Page on a trash can, and then stabs Hangman repeatedly with a fork. Archer
and then he licked the fork, dude. Like that was a bit much. Like, really, like that was too much, especially for broadcast. Like. Ugh, that was disgusting.
Well, listen, if you get it's almost like they are courting that kind of reaction. Like they are hardly holding up on any of this. Like if there is any negativity towards how violent some of their matches are, this to me is a clear indication.
I draw the line at like eating blood. You know,
we're seeing fire. We're seeing like glass broken. Like they have gone so far beyond what I anticipated when Tony Khan in one of his first scrums explained how like a lights out match, you're never going to see that level of violence on TV. That's for pay-per-view. And that's completely gone out the window where like they clearly like they are. And listen, this would not be happening if the network had any issue with it. Like they clearly don't have a problem with how violent this is. So stabs him with the fork, then gets a barbed wire chair out from underneath, and it leads to them on the apron, and Archer lifts him up for the blackout, and I'm just thinking, okay, Page is going to slip back here. Page takes the blackout onto the steel steps. This looked so brutal.
I don't. I can't imagine the margin of error. Okay,
Oh,
that would have resulted in complete disaster for Hangman Page here. Like,
oh, dude, this is
oh
gonna suck
god,
to wake up tomorrow and feel like he came down like on the edge of it too. Like it just looked terrible. It looked terrible to take this.
I'm almost shocked that they like actually decided to go with the spot. I mean, the AEW ladders are different from the WWE ones in that there's like a wider surface on the side, and somehow they can do spots like this. But like, I mean, Archer and Hangman, I would say, fully committed to it. You know, there's no hesitation. I'm gonna throw you onto these steps, like this is a video game, and God, they did it. It was very scary to watch.
Page gets back to his feet and he wraps the barbed wire around his arm to attack Archer. And then with Archer on the edge, Page takes off the barbed wire and throws it down to the mat. And Paul Turner leans over to grab the barbed wire, creating a base for Hangman to flip over to hit the buckshot, sending him and Archer crashing off the apron through the table that had been set up ages ago. And that is our finish, where Archer stays down for the count of 10 at 15 minutes and 27 seconds. I thought this finish was goddamn brilliant. And the way that they did this with the rope, that was to just think of this, of using the referee as your base for the move in place of the top rope, was just, I was just very, very impressed with it.
You know, whoever helped come up with the spot, if there's a writing staff, you know, that came up with that put their minds together to create this, everybody deserves their roses. What incredible creativity that makes all of us, I think, absolutely fall in love with this art form. Like this to me is really professional wrestling at its best, when you can apply logic to a superhuman athletic feat that ends with a spectacular table crash and ends the story in such a brilliant, memorable way. It was wonderful, incredibly well thought out. I mean, even from the point of the barbed wire being on the chair and Archer going for the power bomb, and Paige surprising us by grabbing the barbed wire midway. It reminded me of the Taker Triple H sledgehammer spot from WrestleMania 17. When Taker went for the last ride, and then everything with Paul Turner, like completely, for all the people that like, you know, might have complaints about modern professional wrestling being devoid of psychology, there was plenty of psychology in this, and it was spectacular. So Page really needed a match like this. I think he needed a match to get people talking about his title run, because I mean, it feels somewhat intermittent. You know, he had big ones, but this was one where I think he needed to show that he wasn't just going to be a B-side to the, you know, the higher star power of a guy like a Kenny Omega or Bryan Danielson in his title defenses. And he was absolutely the talk coming out of this. You know, in hindsight, I think the style of match, a lunatic like Lance Archer, who is so incredibly valuable for guys like Page, turned out to be the perfect setting and the perfect opponent.
Yeah, I thought the match delivered in a big way. It was, you know, the level of violence you kind of have to do for these Texas death matches to keep these matches of that level, and the high level of expectation that your fan base has. And for Archer too, like, let's remember, like he avoided, like, the way he was talking about, like, the margin for error of how bad that moonsault could have been for him. It was pretty scary. And this was his first significant match since October when he got injured. And then the show ends with Adam Cole walking out, but he doesn't attack Page. Instead, he just takes the belt and puts it on his shoulder and leaves, and just indicating that's what he is after. And that would seem to be the match for Revolution. We've only got 3 more Dynamites before the pay-per-view. So wow. It's coming up pretty soon, and this looks to be the direction that they are headed.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, Cole's a relatively big name going for the title. I think it would be worthy. I don't know if that's a match that's worthy of being the headline match, especially, you know, on a show that has a Jon Moxley and a CM Punk and a Bryan Danielson attached to it. I mean, if it's Moxley Danielson, I can see that, you know, being the top match. What else do you see at this point? You know, with only 3 weeks away, what do you see for MJF and Punk?
I think that's the match at the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I think both those matches will dwarf, the star power of as much as I think we're going to enjoy Cole versus Page in terms of star power. It'll be hard for this match to compete with the others, but the challenge is on for a champion like Hangman Page, somebody who comes in and is a champion strictly off of his AEW notoriety. He's going to have to kind of fight, to be at the top of the card despite holding that belt, but really be in the minds of everybody's conversation coming off of these shows every single time.